Hi, I'm Gabe.
I'm Kelly.
I'm the other Kelly.
They're giggly today. We just had our
Just
holiday
want
party. It's the end of 2017. We've made it to the end of the year.
No one
Yeah.
thought we would.
It was uncertain at times.
It really was. Like,
So
just, casual nuclear war.
right.
Always on the horizon.
Well, the year's not over.
Yeah, that's true.
We
Okay.
could all still die before it's over.
Happy holidays.
We have a few hours before the end of the year. So we thought for our last podcast of 2017, we'd kind of do a look back at the year that was, try and figure out if there's any way out of the mistakes that everyone in the entire country made over the past 12 months.
I feel like it was a very middle of like the line year. Like, oh, there was lots of good things, but there were also some very bad things.
Some very bad things.
Like I had a baby and my dad didn't die, but he came close.
Yeah.
So
we're, I was going to say thoughts and prayers to him, but that's like the worst phrase in the world now.
especially coming from somebody who
Yeah.
was not religious to somebody who was also not religious.
We wish
That's
him the
okay.
best.
President Trump will read you from 2 Corinthians.
Right.
And he'll have us say grace over no food.
Have we seen him read yet? Do we know for sure that he reads?
Is he literate?
Hmm.
So kicking off the year, he got sworn in.
For some reason.
Yeah. So like you said, bad and good. The bad part of that was Trump got sworn in. The good part was we had record-setting marches in Washington.
The next day.
Yeah.
And across the country.
It was
Yes.
more of a shuffle, but yeah.
It was a march here in Columbus.
Well, in DC, it was definitely more of a shuffle
don't
because there
think
were
they'd
so
run.
many people.
That was amazing.
It was.
It did set a good tone for the resistance movement, being led by women. That was great.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Well, and what I liked is
Yes.
that people then didn't just take that moment. They got involved here locally around the Row anniversary, the Row Together events across Ohio.
Right.
We had over 1,000 people come out to these activist boot camps and take action, and they have remained involved, which honestly, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, okay, well, this is a backlash to that moment, and will people stay involved? And, whether it was the march or, people showing up at the airports over the immigration bans and the other things, people have really stayed engaged and involved. And I think that is something that we should all be really thankful for.
Yeah, and it wasn't just in Columbus. It was in Dayton. It was in
Mhm.
Cincinnati. It was
Cleveland.
in Cleveland.
Yeah.
It was kind of awesome. That was the first time y'all had ever done like more than like one city.
Oh yeah.
More than 2,
More than 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Because Cleveland always has one.
sometimes.
Okay.
Well, almost every single one of those events was larger than our annual State House Lobby Day has been historically.
Yeah.
Just huge crowds coming out to really learn about all of the things we've been facing in the past, all of the things that we, back in January, we were sort of planning like, okay, what are the attacks on abortion rights that we might see in 2017?
And what we have seen.
Yeah, all of them, it turned out.
Yeah.
But these were Ohioans legitimately interested in not just being angry, but being angry and informed, which is a much better combination. Those are
and
great
active.
events. Yeah.
And active.
Yeah.
That was, I think, one of the real hallmarks of those events was people didn't just come and listen to a speaker. They came and they took action.
Right.
And that was really, I think, us, responding to a moment. And, a lot of people who came to those events had been to one of the marches, and they were like, thank you for having this. I getting involved maybe for the first time, or maybe just really felt like they needed community because they, were so upset about, what, America might look like under President Trump. So, that we were able to, build community around that moment and give people real concrete things to do that are making a difference, I think was great. I think it was great. And it was such a coalition moment as well. This wasn't just a NARAL event, New Voices for Reproductive Justice, the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, the Ohio Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, Women Have Options. I mean, so many of our coalition partners, National Council of Jewish Women, were involved. And I think we're at our best when we're united like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we went from good to bad. Republicans in the U.S. Senate stole a Supreme Court seat. They said that they were going to, and they
did.
They did.
Well, and I think, the thing, I know this is a look back show, but looking forward, there will be a Supreme Court case on an abortion related issue in being heard next year in 2018. And that's really going to be the first time we're going to see exactly what Neil Gorsuch is going to be like on the Supreme Court on our issue. It's the NIFLA v. Becerra case out of California that has to do with regulations on fake clinics operated by anti-choice organizations.
A law that goes to the Supreme Court as to whether or not people can lie to you.
Yeah. And so this will really be the first time that we see whether or not the anti-choice and conservative strategy to steal a Supreme Court justice nomination from President Obama and hand it to President Trump, if that is going to, pay off the way that they hoped it would, that they'll have someone who will replace Scalia on the court with a judicial strategy and outlook. And so we're going to see by June of next year, we're going to know what that looks like.
Right. Yeah. I was talking about this, Neil Gorsuch with a friend of mine just yesterday, and he was saying that even though they took the seat, thinking conservatives have to be frustrated that, Scalia, even though everybody here completely disagreed with what he had to say, I mean, he did put together, intelligent arguments. He was wrong, but he was smart about it.
Right.
Neil Gorsuch, we have not yet seen any sign of intelligence here, on a level that matches who he was replacing.
Well, and also he was so disrespectful, particularly to the women in the Senate during the confirmation process and the questioning. It'll be interesting to see what he's like during the oral arguments on this case and what his, if he takes a hand in writing the ruling and all of that. It's always when there's a new person on the court or, around these controversial issues. It's always, that first case that you really look at and pick apart and try to read the tea leaves for the future. I know.
Right. Back to state legislation. Here in Ohio, we had a mix of good and bad. We saw the abortion method ban pass the Ohio Senate. The ban prohibiting the most commonly performed procedure for second trimester abortions, the safest, the one that the doctors prefer and recommend to their patients.
The alternative being, inducing labor.
Right. So this passed the Ohio Senate, but not without a fight from you personally, dressed up as the characters from The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
Which I finally started reading.
Really? I read it. This is a reference I get and you don't. I read this book in high school. It came out in the 80s.
Well, I did not read that one.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I started reading it on the plane last
I saw
week.
that actually. Well, it's a great book. It's definitely different from the TV show. So
Yeah.
don't go in with that kind of expectation.
I haven't seen the TV show, so
Well, there we go. You really...
I wasn't dressed up as the costumes. I didn't need to know it. I was just taking the pictures.
Well, I think what was interesting is that it did capture a moment because the TV series was on and people were dialing into this. And I think in many ways it was so timely because of Trump's election, and white women were facing a new reality. And that's why that book and that TV series, kind of hit a nerve at that moment in time. But let's be clear, Black women have lived the dystopia.
Oh yeah.
Right.
That was described in this, and many Black authors wrote about this before. And so, a lot of our, colleagues in the reproductive justice movement are like, oh, you're waking up to that. Oh, okay.
Welcome to the other side. Yeah.
Okay. Well, like exactly as Kelly said, here, welcome to it. But I do think it captured a moment and really, really helped crystallize for people what it would look like to lose your reproductive freedoms, and how all encompassing that can be in your life.
Yeah, I think white women, especially like people who are my age, are finally realizing like what it would mean for us to lose everything that like the second win first wave feminists had actually managed to win for us. Mm-hmm. So that would suck and does suck.
Yeah, it does. And, when you talk about taking away the right to abortion or access to abortion, it just makes it unsafe.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't make it go away. So, whether you're talking about this ban or that ban or banning it altogether, at no time in history and nowhere around the globe has that stopped women from having abortions.
I mean,
has
it
just
still
changed the condition.
Yeah, it still happens in Guatemala where you get 30 years of like prison if you get convicted of abortion.
Right.
Like,
And
it still happens.
Yeah, I tell people if you want to know how far a woman will go to not have another child when she's not able to, manage being a parent to another child at that time in her life, trot up to the Contraception Museum on campus at Case Western and look at some of the things that women have used over the years, including
Lysol, bleach.
The one that really gets me is the dried beaver testicle tea.
Ugh.
The people will drink to try to prevent conception.
Gross.
Yeah. Let that sink in.
I'd rather it not.
Yeah. So, I think it's just a little bananas that legislators think, oh, we're going to pass all these laws and somehow we're going to change, thousands and thousands of years of human behavior and history. You're not. You're going to change whether or not it's safe.
There was at one point an herb that was so efficient in like either abortion or preventing contraception that we managed to make it go extinct.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a new one on me, but I'm not surprised. And that, and there are herbal remedies and home remedies that people do turn to. And,
again, not safe.
Well, people will do what they feel like they need to do to take care of their families.
Sometimes, perhaps even like in some cases, they may be safer than childbirth.
Yeah. Well, my grandma, she had an illegal abortion in the 30s because she needed to take care of the kids that she had. So, women will do what they think they have to do, regardless of what legislators say.
Okay.
Do you need another like a pop culture reference to watch with regards to like abortion and childcare? Because you can watch Called the Midwife. It's pretty great.
Call the Midwife?
Yeah.
What Netflix keeps slinging this at me and I haven't watched it yet.
It's really good.
It's really good. Settle in over the holiday.
Right now, it's going through like it's based in the late 50s after the National Health Services in the UK was like was put together and created, and right now it's going through like babies that were born like with thalidomide, so like the seal limb babies. So that's kind of it's fun, it's horrifying, and this is like at this point in time, abortion is still outlawed in the UK. So you see what happens to some people who try to go get an illegal abortion, and some survive and some that don't, and it's really good.
Sounds like a great way to spend the holiday.
I mean, yes. They have Christmas episodes.
Oh my God. Wonderful.
Because it's a British show, and that's the thing they do is they always have like Christmas specials.
Father Christmas.
Call the Midwife. It's on Netflix?
It is.
Is it made by Netflix, or is it just like something else that just happens to be on Netflix?
I think it just happens to be on Netflix.
So you might be able to find it elsewhere.
Yeah, there's like 8 seasons.
Oh.
Maybe more.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's been around for a while. It's really good.
Oh.
There's a lesbian. They're beautiful.
Okay. We'll find a link and we'll put that one in the show notes.
It's just what I've been watching recently and seems relevant to people who would listen to this show.
Call the Midwife. Got it. So also in state legislation, back to the bad, they were able to put another $1 million for crisis pregnancy centers here in Ohio into the state budget.
We were hoping it wouldn't be $1 million. It was like what originally 600,000.
They toyed around.
Originally, it wasn't in at all.
Right.
Oh,
and then it kind of wormed its way back in through the process.
I'm sure that they probably have people who look at that and call and be like, "Hey, where's our money?"
Oh, you can rest assured.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio Right to Life, when the first version of the budget came out, they were there in finance committee at the very first opportunity with crisis pregnancy center staffers talking about, what they want to do.
Aren't half of their staffers in the state legislature?
Well,
one of them is.
Well, and let's be clear on this funding. It's funding that's supposed to be part of temporary assistance for needy families, which is cash assistance for things like kids who are hungry.
Right.
So let's take money literally away from hungry children and give it to fake clinics who lie to their clients and who don't provide actual reliable medical services. Yeah, it seems like a great plan, especially since, we have an appallingly high infant mortality crisis in Ohio. So sure, let's give $1 million to these places.
No.
Yeah, I agree. No.
But it is in the budget. So we keep a list of all of the restrictions, attacks on abortion rights, reproductive health care funding, all of those things that John Kasich has signed. And this got added to the list. That's restriction number 19. Yeah, that was for the bulk of this year, the bad thing that got signed into law.
Yes.
So we kept going on in state legislation, saw a return of the 6-week ban. That thing has had the most storied, checkered past in the state legislature, vetoed just, a year ago in December, but yet it's here.
Hanging out.
Right.
Well, it's
Our
not
old
just
friend.
here. It's also in Washington. The backers of that piece of legislation, Janet Folger Porter, has had meetings in the White House.
Hanging out with our best friend, Roy Moore.
Yeah. Well, has been doing that recently. But before that, early in the year, she had Tom DeLay and herself and her staff were in the White House. They met with staff there about that legislation. They met with the Vice President, Pence, had a little grip and grin at the White House. They also had their first hearing in the state or the national capital, where they again employed a tactic that we saw first here in Columbus, Ohio, where they, played an ultrasound and, in committee. And, of course, it wasn't one that was, for the time period that they're talking about banning abortion, but,
Right.
Let's not get those things, in the way. And then, of course, as Kelly mentions, when they're so desperate to get that legislation passed, that the head of that organization, Faith to Action, who's behind that, went down and was the spokesperson for Roy Moore through this election. It was, if you think that there's any length that these people won't go to, any person that they won't back, any line that they won't cross to outlaw abortion, I just think you should look at the way that they rallied behind Roy Moore after all of those allegation after allegation of sexual impropriety with minor women, and all of the other things he said about, slavery. And it was stunning the way that they rallied behind him. And it's all because they want to outlaw abortion.
Right. So Janet Folger Porter and Roy Moore, they get the
Strange
walk of shame.
bedfellows. Yeah.
Walk of shame of 2017.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thankfully they lost this round. But if you think they're vanquished, they're not. They'll be back.
Right. Especially since she's got this legislation to work
Try and
on.
shoehorn through the Ohio legislature.
It's kind of a puzzle as to exactly, how much Janet Folger Porter will be involved trying to get this bill moving in Ohio. She certainly, believes that her presence is a good thing. But the actual bill sponsor, Christina Hagan, is running for Congress. And so she's trying to use this to demonstrate that she is a, rabidly conservative Trump supporter who likes these sort of...
She doesn't understand a single word she reads. Like when she's doing her testimony on this bill, I'm like, you don't know what any of what you are saying means.
That might be true.
Well, whether she understands it or not, the fact that she would be willing to, abdicate her own right to make decisions over pregnancy is one of the things that's always shocked me about anti-choice women. I'm like, wait a minute. You're advocating to have your ability to make decisions taken away. Sarah Palin, she talked about, when she became pregnant unexpectedly, at a time later than she had
maternal
planned.
age.
Yeah, which is 35.
Something like that.
And, and the Down syndrome diagnosis and all that. And she talked about the decisions she made. And, my attitude has always been,
it is a decision.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome that was a process that you were able to go through to make decisions about what was best for your family. Because if you had your way, no one would make decisions. Things would just happen to people.
Right.
So You're welcome. All the people who have made those decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting that the conversation you're having and telling about your story to make the decision, you're missing that it is predicated on you being able to make that decision.
Right.
Right. In Congress, Obamacare is alive. We saw we saw the attempt to kill that. Yet another Republican plot to destroy Obamacare stopped at the very last second. So that was good. The bad thing is that they have just passed tax reform, and so they
don't call it that. Tax scam.
Tax scam. Yes, you're correct. They're destroying the way that we fund many key programs that the government runs, just to create a $1.5 trillion deficit and give giant tax cuts to Donald Trump and his friends.
Well, including CHIP.
I don't understand how this is legal.
It's legal because they make the laws.
I don't like that.
That's why elections matter. But the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP,
yeah,
not funded.
Yeah.
But, it's about the babies.
Speaking of your vote mattering, the Virginia House of Delegates had a Democratic representative win by exactly 1 vote.
I know. I saw that.
1 vote. What's that mean? It means your vote matters. Vote.
Yeah. Please. Yeah. So that was in Congress, and you were talking about CHIP.
Still not renewed.
Sorry, Jamie's blowing up my phone right now. Sherrod Brown is like the biggest supporter of CHIP. CHIP is the Children's Insurance Health Program, right?
Children's Health Insurance Program. That's why it's CHIP.
Yeah,
CHIP. CHIP.
CHIP.
Ooh.
Yeah. CHIP.
Thank you, Hillary Clinton, for beginning that program. Not necessarily Orrin Hatch, as he claims to have.
As First Lady.
Right. Mm-hmm. But Sherrod Brown is a major vocal proponent of this bill to try and continue supporting children, across Ohio and across the country who rely on this critical program that needs to be continued. Trump and his people don't want it, though.
Well, and if you're on the Facebook machine, you may have seen video of Sherrod Brown really taking his colleague, the chairman of the committee, Orrin Hatch, to task over CHIP. And he's like, what are you doing?
You're gutting your own program.
Right. And he's like, well, and Orrin Hatch is like, oh, well, I take exception to that. And everyone knows. And I'm like, no, everyone doesn't know, because, what you say means nothing. What you do means everything. And what you have done is you have left these children out in the cold without health insurance when they need that. I mean, when you've got Jimmy Kimmel crying on television,
right, with
his baby in his arms, talking about how other kids won't be able to get the health care that they need like his son did, you have really stepped over the line. I mean, when comedians are in tears begging you to do the right thing by children, I think you need to look in the mirror and say, what am I doing and who am I serving and why am I here?
I don't understand why the U.S. legislator is just not interested in having anyone in this country insured. Like, why do we want to just kill all of your constituents? Do you really want to do you want to vote that bad that you'd kill everybody under you? I mean, that's yikes.
Thank God for Sherrod Brown.
Yes, absolutely. So we finished up here in the state legislation with House Bill 214 passing. They were calling it the Down syndrome abortion ban. What we've really understood looking at this piece of legislation as it's moved forward is that while the intent is to interfere with a woman's ability to have that conversation with her doctor when she decides what's best for her, if the bill would be enacted, it would go into effect 90 days after Kasich signed it, then this applies a 4th-degree felony charge, which is, a career-ending penalty to doctors based on, factors outside of their control. And so it's really designed to just shut down every single abortion clinic in the state if they can, to force providers to leave the state of Ohio or stop offering safe and legal abortion care.
Well, and I think the thing that's really upsetting about that is that this time after time, this legislature has criminalized the profession of medicine,
right,
as it relates to women's reproductive health care. And, we know for a fact that doctors have chosen not to practice in Ohio. that they have received training in Ohio and chosen not to stay in Ohio because of these laws. They have testified to this fact repeatedly, and the legislature continues to ignore it. And Ohio's a medical destination state. People come here from all over the world to go to Cleveland Clinic and other places, Ohio State Medical Center, for world-class health care. And yet what we're doing when it comes to reproductive health care is that we are criminalizing physicians. We have women who have to flee the state to access abortion care because of all the different bans that are in place. How does that make Ohio a place where the best and the brightest physicians and young people will want to be? We were talking about not just an infringement on reproductive rights and someone being able to access care, but will there be gynecologists for women who are having children? Will they practice here? Will the best and the brightest be here in Ohio and want to work and companies locate here, to be part of a thriving economy for our state? I mean, if we continue to roll back the clock, this is going to have an economic and a medical impact that I think is far-reaching.
And unfortunately, it doesn't affect just people in Ohio. It also affects people in West Virginia, people in Kentucky, people in Indiana and Pennsylvania, where the clinics have already been closing. I mean, West Virginia and Kentucky only have one clinic each.
Right.
Half of ours have closed, and who knows how many more are going to close. So you're going to see millions of people without access to abortion.
That's right. That's right. And why?
For funsies.
Yeah. I mean, this does nothing to protect women's health care. And
because Paul Ryan wants us to have more babies.
Well, you have them.
No,
I not you. I mean him.
I had my one. I'm fine.
No, I'm talking to him.
He's had 3. He's fine.
Well, I think one of the things that has always bothered me about this particular ban, the Down syndrome ban too, is that time and again they've turned down amendments that would have actually helped families who have children with Down syndrome be able to best meet their needs so that they can have the thriving and full lives that we all want them to have.
Right.
So let's be clear. This legislation, it has nothing to do with Down syndrome except for the fact that it's exploiting it as part of a larger strategy to outlaw abortion for everyone.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, they turned down an amendment for funding special education. They turned down an amendment for Medicare for the life of the patient with Down syndrome.
Yep.
And what was the other amendment? I don't remember it.
Special education
funding. Oh, no, it was from the brilliant state representative, Amelia Sykes, that said that women could not be compelled to testify as to the reason that they wanted to end their pregnancy. Because, of course, if you're going to criminalize doctors, there's going to be a trial and there's going to have to be witnesses. And, and she wisely looked at this legislation.
Who would testify against their doctor for care that they were seeking?
Well, if you get hauled into court and you're threatened and, who knows, maybe a prosecutor says, hey, we're going to get children's services involved and, we're going to say you're an unfit mother if you don't testify. I mean, things can get really bad.
Yeah.
Really
so
fast.
Essentially you are also criminalizing the person who was seeking the care.
Of course, but they don't want to do that outright because, they don't like the idea of having people understand where this logically leads, which is
they don't
putting
like those
women
optics,
in jail.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
What's the next good thing, Gabe?
The next good thing is that 2017 is hereby done. We head into 2018.
Is anyone listening drunk yet? Are you drinking out there? Are you
we out of time?
Hopefully not if you're listening to the radio version because it's Friday morning at like 9 a.m.
Day drinking is fine. It's fine.
Are we optimistic about 2018 or?
I mean, I'm optimistic for November 2018 because we're going to put in the work to get people to the polls.
I think we will.
Friggin' better
have to.
And let's be clear. Like looking back to Alabama and Virginia, this is a message out to everyone who's in politics. You have to make Black women a real part of your strategy and your leadership and your policy because they are the ones who have been voting to save this country
for real
from Roy Moore and from all of these other things. And be clear, they're voting because they have more on the line than anyone else. They have more at stake. They have more at risk than anyone else. And, if you are a political person and you're listening to this, I am telling you now, You cannot wait until October or November to say, oh, we need to figure out how to get Black folks to the polls. This has to be a partnership, a real partnership where women of color, men of color are part of your policy, part of your leadership, and real parts of your organization. Because otherwise, you're not gonna have the votes you need to win. Because white guys forget about it, except for Gabe. He votes right, but
don't give him too much credit.
Well, he does vote right.
I would hope so.
But let's be honest. It's single white women, it's people of color, it's millennials, and these. We have to invest in these communities because we need them to turn out to vote, and because it's the right thing to do.
That's what she said. Okay, everybody have a good year, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.